All right. Welcome to a January fantasy football show here on the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, Mr. Dylan Clemons. What's going on, man?
Not much, Joe. Just braving the cold out here in Wisconsin. I know around the country it's freezing cold right now, but it hasn't gotten over positive temperature the last couple days, and it's not looking good here. But thankful to have everything still working around me, even in the cold and stuff, man. But it's really crazy. Plus, we got like 16 inches of snow the last
Dude,
couple days
I don't
too, so
envy you
it's
at all.
been nuts.
We might get hit with like 3 tonight. It's kind of like flurrying right now. Not really doing hard. There's a coating. Um, But yeah, we're getting. I mean, of course, 3 inches here shuts down everything, man. Nobody
I'm
knows what to
sure.
do here. It's absolutely madness. But yeah, it'll be interesting here. What to see what happens. Of course, not that I'm gonna really need it, but I just figured I'd go test out my snowblower. I have one, just
Oh,
in
there you
case.
go.
We do get the occasional 10, 12 inches of snow every now and then. So it's like, I got a pretty lengthy driveway. I'm not trying to shovel all that. So I
Yeah,
have
no
one. And of
doubt.
course I went out there and it just like nothing. I'm like, duh. All right. My
Yep.
back is not gonna work for 3 days after tomorrow. Great. So it'll be all right though. We'll figure it out. But yeah, it's freezing, which is why I'm wearing the sweatshirt because I don't
Yeah,
usually
no
do that
doubt.
in the house. But
Got a long sleeve is on
we
as well,
are
and the
good to
beanie,
go.
man.
So all right, man. So we are here going to recap a fantasy football half PPR mock draft that we did for the 2024 season here. We just finished a couple days ago. We only did 4 rounds. There was 12 of us. So let's just jump right into things. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, man. Let me
Excited to
bring it up
talk
here
some
on the screen.
Mickens.
So this is the mock here. So we've got myself. I took the first pick. Dylan, you grabbed number 2. We had Keith Lott at number 3. We had Mike Bonni at 4. Mike LaPlant at 5. John LaPresto, Chris Robin, Mase Riney, Ryan Kirksey, Dennis Sosa, Keith Fleming, and then JJ Schultz. So actually, if you want to read JJ's recap on the site, fantasysixpack.net, that's where it is. We'll throw it in the show description here. So go check that out as well. He did a great job there. But what we're going to do, we're going to run kind of through pick by pick and just, we'll have some pauses and do some quick analysis on things. So just starting off here. So again, I had the first pick. I went with McCaffrey. Then you went with CeeDee. Keith went with Justin Jefferson. Then we had Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. So after the first 6 picks, man, I was the only guy who took a running back. I mean, that's wild to me. That even in a half PPR league. I mean, just what's your quick take on just the fact that we're seeing this just trend now where it is all in on the receivers?
Yeah, I think it just kind of speaks loud enough to what the running back position is right now, Joe. Bijan was a generational talent coming in, and we'll get to him being the second running back taken off the board here. And then you have like guys like Brees Hall and Saquon. Me personally, I feel like an elite wide receiver at this point of the draft is just much safer outside of Christian McCaffrey. He's my undisputed number 1 pick. The man is just crazy. Running back is still valuable, especially in a half PPR format, and his value is just so much higher than every other running back. But like you said, it did surprise me a little bit with it being half PPR and the next running back, or there was only one running back in the first.
Yeah, I kind of thought, I'm not gonna lie, I went back and forth between CMC, Jefferson, Lamb. Those were kind of my 3. I probably will still have Jefferson up there. I get the concerns with the quarterback, but look, as of right now, I'm still expecting Kirk Cousins to come back to be quarterback for that team, and we know those two are so good together. I mean, look, Justin Jefferson was even good with just mediocre quarterback play there. I mean, so you throw Kirk back in there. I mean, I know Lamb had an amazing season.
Yeah.
Jefferson has not been bad at all ever. So give me that over Lamb just slightly. We've seen Lamb just kind of trend upwards. This offense for Dallas was out of this world, like good this year, especially in that passing game. So,
Yep.
but yeah, McCaffrey for me is still the undisputed number one. What do we say? Let me just kind of put a reason why I do this. Like, why do we always say Travis Kelce is a first round talent, right? Or maybe not next year, but in seasons past, why do we say that, right?
The positional advantage, yep, that he gives you.
Christian McCaffrey kind of gives you that now.
Yes, he does. Yep.
If he can finish a whole year, right, which he did. I mean, he got bumps and bruises, right? But if he can finish a whole year, dude, he finished over 100 points higher than the next running back on the board.
That's crazy. It really
That's
is
insane this year. That's in half PPR. If you go to full PPR, he is still over 100 points over Breece Hall.
Yeah.
By the way, the fact that Breece Hall is number 2, that's just insanity.
Yeah.
So Christian McCaffrey gives you such a huge advantage at the running back position. Now, look, am I expecting a 100-point advantage again? Absolutely not. And I said that about Kelce coming into this year, and I got screamed at all over the place when I said I'm not taking Kelce in the first round because expecting a 100-point advantage over the next tight end is ludicrous.
Sure.
Sorry, guys. I was right. I was wrong a lot, but I was flat out right about that one. I didn't expect him to have the season he did, but still. Christian McCaffrey still is number one. You just have to hope he stays healthy. That offense is still going to be humming. It's tough to stop that 49ers offense with the way that they are, coached and the play calling and just all the talent around them. And when they get close, it's hand the ball to Christian McCaffrey time and let him go score. It's so massive. So
yes.
Let's see here. Let's jump over here to the next 6 picks here. We got Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, AJ Brown, Kyren Williams, Garrett Wilson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know if I'm like shocked really about any of these. I guess maybe it's kind of okay, Bijan went second running back over the Breece Hall, right? Who, yes, I know it's only half PPR, but still in half PPR, he was RB4 this year, coming off that ACL and splitting time early on this year with Dalvin Cook. It took him a few weeks to really like just take control of that offense, in my opinion. But do you agree with that one?
That Breece probably, yeah. No, I agree with you on that as well. It's just incredible stuff what we saw from down the stretch. And there's with Bijan, man, we have a lot of question marks about Bijan heading into next season because we don't know the offensive staff. Obviously, Arthur Smith wasn't good for him. So hopefully we get an upgrade, but we don't know what's going to happen there. That offense has a bunch of weapons, maybe they're going to use Drake London more. Hopefully we see, Kyle Pitts utilized more. And Breece did all of that, Joe, with awful quarterback play and under an awful offense once Aaron Rodgers went down in the very first game. So what we saw from him in the back half of the season was just great stuff and won you fantasy leagues. And I tend to agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right now, I'm Breece Hall over Bijan. I get, Bijan is a fantastic talent. Breece Hall came out pretty damn good too. And look, I mean, as of right now, we don't know who's going to be coach, right? There's a lot of rumors that Bill Belichick might go there. Oh boy. Do we want to deal with that? Is that any better than Arthur Smith when it comes to using your running back room? Like, you have to hope he goes back to like Corey Dillon days.
Right.
Good luck. Right. I mean, you would have thought he would have done that with Ramondre over Zeke. It didn't happen.
Yep.
I don't know. There's a huge question mark there. So again, these early mocks are fun, just to kind of see what people are thinking. But I semi disagree with that. One more interesting one here, real quick, is Kyren Williams. Look, he had an amazing season.
Mm-hmm.
Only played 12 games, if that. I don't even remember how
Something
many games
around
he
there.
played.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, he played 12 games, scored 15 touchdowns. That's pretty damn good.
Incredible efficiency. Is that going to hold
Fantasy
up
points per
this
game,
following
he was
years?
number 2 for running backs. So had he finished a whole year, there would not have been a 100-point gap between CMC and the next running back. Kyren would have closed that gap pretty drastically. He falls all the way to 10. Some people say it's too early. They're not buying, the hype. The Rams kind of do funky things sometimes.
Yeah.
Are you buying Kyren Williams, being this good?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, obviously, we can't tell if there's going to be another running back that comes in here. Maybe they draft one late because Kyra doesn't have, great draft capital to save his job or anything. But he was so good. And to be honest with you, Joe, I don't have the stat pulled up in front of me, but I feel like he's the only other guy that gets close to the same amount of snap share as Christian McCaffrey at the running back position. Like it was really him. They would sprinkle in Royce Freeman a touch here and there, Ronnie Rivers a little bit in the playoff game, but it really is just Kyren Williams backfield, and I expect it to stay that way. So I'm fine taking him at the end of the first round, depending on what wide receivers have gone and what running backs are also off the board.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Kyren Williams, now it's hard, you're seeing like snap share of only like 60% for him, but you got to realize that that's with him missing a few games. So the fact that he was still at 60% is pretty crazy for him. So yeah, I agree. I think he needs to be in that mix of the first round for right now, just because there are so many more question marks behind him, in my opinion, at the running back position. I mean, we're looking at some guys taken later. It is, I like Gibbs, but I still don't know if
it's a full blown committee, Joe, in Detroit.
Montgomery's not going anywhere, right? I really don't think. I love Gibbs' talent, but Montgomery ain't going nowhere. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is fantastic. I'd be taking Taylor over Gibbs. Jordan got both of them, so it doesn't really matter on the turn. Achane, I mean, is Mostert going anywhere? We know how good Achane can be, but guy can't stay healthy. Mostert's there. Also just not really sure I'm buying into this offense being quite as efficient as it was early this season. We saw how it really just kind of went downhill. Teams started figuring out how to play against them. Barkley, who knows where he's going to land. ETN kind of, he started off hot, didn't finish off that great. But let's just rip through the next picks here. So we did have Jonathan Taylor. We had our first quarterback off the board with Lamar Jackson. We had Devon Achane. We had Saquon Barkley, Stephon Diggs, second quarterback at Pat Mahomes, Travis Etienne, and I went one too far. Sorry, that was Pat Mahomes was 6. I can count, I swear. So I kind of ripped through some of the running backs there, so we'll avoid kind of double talking on that one. But we had 2 quarterbacks go in the first half of the second round here, and we started seeing this trend last season. With these elite quarterbacks, the Pat Mahomes, the Jalen Hurts, the Josh Allens. Those were the 3, right, that got pushed up the board second, third round in most drafts that I was in. Do you agree with that strategy still, knowing what we saw this year with guys like Sam Howell being useful for many weeks, right?
He was.
A lot of guys came out of nowhere and just were super good for a while.
Yeah, no, for me, I'm more of a wait later on a quarterback kind of guy. And it really surprised me the two quarterbacks that went here ahead of Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen as well, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. We just saw Mahomes have an abysmal season, I felt. And Rashee Rice came on towards the end of the season, which was great to see. Travis Kelce, maybe he was hurt. Maybe he bounces back fully healthy next year, or maybe Joe, he just took a step back. We'd like to think that Kansas City will go out and target a wide receiver this offseason. There's a few out there, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, just to name a few. But yeah, I don't love the idea of drafting him in the second round. Lamar, we've seen at times in his career be a cheat code because of his rushing ability. And
wasn't though.
He
like
wasn't.
he had
this year
weeks,
he
man.
wasn't great.
So good, dude. I'm telling you. I mean, like, look, the league that we did with some of our members, right? I scored the highest points in that league, largely part to Lamar Jackson and CMC, right? I had the two best players at their position this year for fantasy. But man, the weeks that I lost, I mean, granted by like a fraction of the points, it seemed like every week, those were the weeks where Lamar was like, yeah, I mean, we're up by 25, so I'm just gonna stop scoring. And you're like, well, damn, dude, like stop handing the ball off to Gus. Like you run it in. That's what I got you for. And so like for fantasy, it wasn't always great with him.
Yeah, in the first couple rounds, Joe, you really want consistency, and I feel like outside of your Jalen Hurts' tush push, there's not much consistency. I feel like at the quarterback position.
I mean, look, we're looking at Jordan Love being a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, Tua was in the top 5 for a long time till they plummeted. Right, Baker's in the top 10. I'm looking at this. This is fantasy data. I'm using whatever quarterback scoring that they use right here. It's crazy. And I said Lamar was number 1. Sorry, I realized Josh Allen was number 1. I don't know why I said that. But Dak, number 3. He wasn't drafted that high. Look, I agree with you, man. Like, and look, I know you want to say draft consistency, right? And so, we got guys taking Barkley and ETN and Achane. Here's the thing, right? With that is, yes, Lamar and Mahomes might be more consistent with those, but Barkley and Achane can give you a difference between a Lamar and I don't know. Let's just even say Trevor Lawrence. That that Barkley over the next running back you're going to take a few rounds later. I mean, unless you get super lucky, it's harder to find these running backs off the waiver wire now. Like everybody's starting to pinpoint on these backups, and they know the committees that are good, at least in the leagues that I'm in.
100%.
So if you're not hitting on your receivers and your running backs a little bit early, you've really got to, you've got to get lucky and find the Raheem Mostert super late in your draft, or the Kyren Williams off the free agent, in week 1, right? Puka Nacua, right, who wasn't drafted in most places, who went with the pick 2-8. And that's the next guy I want to ask you about here. You've got to find those guys early and ride them. If not, man, like you're going to struggle nowadays because people are really, with all the information at our fingertips and sites like this, just feeding you information, it's hard to find these guys, as easily. But quarterbacks, man, streaming quarterbacks, especially early on, and then you finally find one who can be consistent enough for you, like you'll be good. Puka Nacua. So we'll finish off here the second round. Puka Nacua, DJ Moore, Brendan Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, Debo Samuel. Puka's interesting, man. He again, a big run on receivers here. Puka is an interesting one to me here, and I do you think he has taken over in LA over Cooper Kupp? Do you think he's worth being drafted ahead of him right now? Because he did.
I don't think so. I think I would still rather have Cooper Kupp, and I know maybe Puka finished out the season a lot better. I agree, but I think it's a little bit recency bias against Cooper Kupp. He dealt with injuries all season. I think it was a calf early, that it was the ankle later. that slowed him down, but I can see him bouncing back. But even this offense, Joe, has some question marks with Matthew Stafford's health moving forward. I know he's feeling good right now, but even last night we saw him take an absolute beating at times, and he always does. So it's a little
And he
interesting
came
with
into the season with a shoulder injury that you thought was just going to linger, but he seemed to push through it. So,
Yep. And then Nacua being drafted over DJ Moore. I mean, there's question marks at that quarterback spot, but I would have taken Ayuk over Puka, just much safer. Probably Debo as well at this point, but I'm okay where he's going. Maybe the top of the third round, maybe around that turn. But yeah, Joe. I guess how do you feel? Do you feel he's taken over for Cooper Kupp now, or would you still rather have Kupp?
they are super close to me. It's I go back and forth on it. You like the younger, more hungry. Maybe more hungry is the wrong word, but you like the younger player who really is can come in and you would hope can actually improve. I mean, he only scored 6 touchdowns, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like he had 1,486 yards and only 6 touchdowns. If he can get in the end zone a couple more times, like how much better could he have been? Like that, it's crazy to think. And yeah, Kupp was of course dealing with the injuries all season long, and that offense really just was sluggish, right? When Kyren Williams was out, Kupp was kind of banged up, and there was this they couldn't really do anything. Kyren Williams came back and really ignited this offense again down the stretch, and you saw it, right? Yeah, I mean, this grouping of receivers, and we can even get into the next grouping, right? So we'll start out the third round. Davante Adams, I took. Chris Olave went. Keenan Allen went at 3-4. Michael Pittman at 3-6. And I'll just throw in Jalen Waddle here at 3-7. This next grouping of receivers is very interesting to me. They're all very viable. Like they're all going to hit some weeks at wide receiver 1. Yep. They're going to be, wide receiver 2s a lot as well. All of these guys are kind of interchangeable to me. Like, and look, I know JJ, and I knew I did it when I took it. I took Debo, and my first pick was CMC, right? It's pretty rare that you'll do that, but like, yeah, that offense is so good.
Very good.
Offense just scores a crap load of touchdowns. I'll take it. Like how I like Chris Olave a lot, right? As an actual player, love it. I had Olave in a lot of places this year. I was pissed off a lot. I mean,
it's probably the same realm of Davante Adams too, right? Like Davante was great for a few weeks earlier in the season, and then the rest of the time you have him like, damn, this is kind of sucking, actually. I think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you love the targets that Olave gets, right? 138 total targets this year. Only caught 87 of them. 1,023 yards. Okay, great. 5 touchdowns. Dude. I mean, he caught as many touchdowns as George Pickens. What?
Oh, man. And Derek Carr was just much worse than we anticipated he was going to be too.
Yeah. Davante Adams still was just a target machine.
It was
175 targets, as bad as it got sometimes. 175 targets, 103 receptions. I mean, that's quarterback play bad right there. Still caught 8 touchdowns. Great. The Raiders 1,000% will be upgrading the quarterback position this offseason. There is no way they go into next season with Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo. Give me Davante Adams at wide receiver. I've lost count.
14.
Whatever. 14 is what it was.
Down. Yep.
That's what he finished this year. There's almost no way he finishes that bad next year, in my opinion.
I'm okay taking him there as well, Joe, now, because Adams was somebody I was a little bit more down on heading into the season. He was in my wide receiver bust video because of where you had to draft him.
Yeah, you still had to draft him at like wide receiver 6.
Exactly.
Or whatever it was.
But
6, 7.
if he stays around wide receiver 14, okay, I'm in. I'm
I'll
back in.
be having a lot of shares of Devontae Adams. It's kind of like where, like I was getting a lot of Olave, right? Because of the same reason. Like,
Mhm.
and he's still going the same things, but like had Adams been gone, Olave easily would have been there for me. So just to round this out here, we got James Cook. I think that one's pretty fine. He finished the season strong. The
Yep.
Bills seem to kind of lean a little more on the running game than we've seen in years past. So James Cook going this early is a pretty safe pick, I think. His quarterback, Josh Allen, goes here. I think we've talked about the quarterbacks. I'm sort of iffy on quarterbacks going that early.
Yeah.
I get it. It's just not my cup of tea. Going here in the rest of the third round, we had Mase take the first tight end. Travis Kelce fell to the third round. I don't tell
What a
you
big
something.
difference.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts went. Nick Chubb, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith round out. I think we talked about Travis Kelce. I kind of reached for tight ends a little bit this year because I wanted the TJ Hawkinson. I wanted the Mark
Which worked out.
Andrews in the
Yep.
4th, 5th round sometimes that they fell to. I didn't have any Kelce. Kelce in the 3rd round, I'll take it. Late 3rd round, I think that's totally fine. Now we did see a downtick in production from him. But I think teams really kind of figured out very, very quickly this season that all they had to do was shut down Travis Kelce.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, really. And then
It
finally Rice started coming
broke
around
out.
and,
Yep.
we saw a little bit of a resurgence, from Kelce a little bit down the stretch. But, he still just sees massive target share. Just the Chiefs offense was just kind of meh this year.
Mhm.
Like they didn't score a lot of touchdowns.
Which is weird to say with Patrick Mahomes as your
Right?
quarterback. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, what was it? He led the league in touchdowns last year, right? With some absurd number like 50 something, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, they in the
This
40s
year,
at least for sure. Yep.
he had 50. I don't know why I said 50. 41 touchdowns. It dropped to 27. I mean, I wasn't expecting 41 touchdowns. I was expecting like, I
Sure.
don't know, 35.
35. Yep.
27 was brutal. That's a massive drop. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say what was going on there. Give me your thoughts on Nick Chubb, man, coming off that brutal knee injury. 3rd
I
round
think
could be a steal, man, but it's a
it could
risk.
be. I was gonna say, I think this one has a lot to do with roster construction. If you're drafting Nick Chubb in the first three rounds, with what Dennis did here, with him drafting Kyren Williams, Chan with the 2nd pick, and Nick Chubb with his 3rd pick, going the heavy RB strategy, I'm more okay doing that because you're committed at that point. But if you go wide receiver, and are taking Nick Chubb as your RB1 in the 3rd round, Joe, that's where I think that gets a lot more sketchy. Because we saw an emergence from Jerome Ford this year, who definitely isn't. He's not bad. He's solid, I would say. Kareem Hunt was signed for a 1-year contract. We'll see if he'll be back or not. But I just think there's a little bit more competition. And even after that knee injury, they might want to work in Jerome Ford even more. But it's probably going to be a slow process for Chubb to ramp up at the beginning of the season. But like I said, Dennis did a good job of him being his RB3 here, and I think that's worth it. But yeah, if you don't draft a running back until round 3, I'm looking elsewhere besides Nick Chubb, just because it's a little too risky for me here. How about yourself?
I don't know if I mind it at this point, even if it was my RB1.
Okay.
He got injured in week 2, so he's gonna have basically the full year, to get healthy. I know it was a bad injury, full tear of the ACL. He actually got a 2nd surgery to fix it back in November. It sounds like he's progressing well so far from everything I've been reading. Nick Chubb, you got to remember, like, yeah, this guy gets a lot of work, but he doesn't necessarily, you would think he gets gets an absolute crap ton of work, but like, yeah, he was still getting a lot of like split touches sometimes with Hunt and everybody else.
Yep.
So like, he's still got some tread on that tires, I think. And we
Mhm.
saw it even in just the first game and a half. I mean, he was cruising, man, to a 6.1 yards
Mhm.
per carry average. I mean, this guy consistently has always over 5 yards per carry. I mean, never had a season where he's had less than 5 yards per carry. And I'll take that. I think he can return. I mean, look, we've seen guys return from injury and perform very, very well. I know he's a little bit older than Breece Hall, but
Yep.
look
Just
what
saw
just
with him
happened
for
with
sure.
Breece Hall. Yeah, even though it wasn't as good for somebody like Javonte Williams coming back from what he did and playing at the level he did,
He was
I
still
mean,
useful. Absolutely.
he was still useful. So I think we're seeing it, right. So let's jump in here into the fourth round of finishing things off here. So we got DK Metcalf, Isaiah Pacheco, Amari Cooper, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, and then I'm just gonna pair these two together, even though it's a little farther than 6. Mark Andrews and Sam Laporta. So, interested
Should we
with your.
touch?
Sorry, go.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna. You talked Kelce a little earlier when you brought up the late third round selection, and I think that's true. But I feel like if with the way that I'm going to draft, I think I am going to wait on tight end later to maybe this tier of guys because I feel a lot more depth at the position now than there just was the past 2 seasons with the emergence of Laporta, Mark Andrews. You got Dalton Kincaid who came in and was really good. Hawkinson, I knew tore his ACL, and his process might be slow coming back.
Brutal.
But yeah, it's definitely
that
not
one
ideal.
sucks.
But I
that's
just
gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt the depth for sure. But yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. Sam Laporta coming in and being good. We got Trey McBride now.
Yep, he's
who's
another
gonna
one.
be good. Yeah, Kincaid, of course, we saw kind of how it as soon as Dawson Knox got healthy, Kincaid was pretty much a non-factor, which is crazy. But
Even my
yeah,
guy Cole Kmet was very solid, towards the end of the year as well. For the Bears as well. So,
yeah. Again, I get the Kelce selection. I don't think I will do it, but I don't dislike it at 3 as much as I disliked drafting him at the end of round 1 this year. I understood the reason why. I just was not touching that. I could potentially take Kelce at the, mid to late third round, depending on what my first 2 picks are. But I'm still not usually a go get an early tight end. In some of my 14 team leagues, I did because, man, you don't want to get stuck with you don't want to get stuck with the 14th tight end off the board. You're talking about like whole whopping zeros out of your tight end at that point.
Yeah.
The one I wanted to ask you about is Nico Collins. We saw how good he can be, and CJ Stroud really just blew up this year. But Tank Dell should be returning this year or next season. Is Nico worth this early pick? Are we forgetting about Tank Dell? In this full disclosure, everybody, no site has 2024 pre-draft rankings on their board, so you're kind of picking blind a little bit. So some players got forgotten about, not gonna lie, but we tried our best. But Nico Collins, is a great player. Ceiling is massive. The floor is also pretty low for him, I feel like, in every game. And especially the ones where Tank Dell is healthy.
Exactly.
And see that. So do you go and take Nico over a guy like Mike Evans, who is just, dude, he always performs. Like, you could argue Mike Evans should be drafted up there with Puka Nacua and Stephon Diggs, honestly, like how good he is, but he always gets pushed down the board because everybody's like, oh, no way he can do it again. Like, there's always a reason. And I'm like, why? Why is there a reason?
Yeah. Is it just because he's another year older this year? Is that why he fell to the 4th round? When I was looking back at the draft board, Joe, it kind of threw me off that he fell because what we just saw happen. And we expect Baker Mayfield to be back in Tampa Bay too. And I'll throw my hands up. I did not think Baker Mayfield was going to be fantasy friendly to Mike Evans this year. And well, he was. He was much better.
That Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both were like completely pushed down the board, and Godwin wasn't awesome. He was okay. Mike Evans
He
was
finished strong. Yep.
amazing.
He was all season
Mike
long. He
Evans
was
was
just absolutely
amazing.
great. Yep.
Another
But
1,000-yard season, 13
yep,
touchdowns. Like, dude, so good.
just alarming numbers. But yeah, man, to be honest with you, you kind of already talked about the Nico stuff with Tank Dell. I am a little bit worried because Nico wasn't as good with Tank Dell in the lineup. So is it a little bit early for him? I think it's okay outside of Mike Evans going behind him. Like, I'd rather have Nico over Calvin Ridley, who went after him here. Like, I'm okay with that, I think. So yeah, Nico's not someone I'm going to be targeting a ton if he's going this early. Like, I'm curious, where's Tank Dell going to go, Joe? If Nico's going here,
I think it's going to be a lot of, we're going to have to watch the injury, how he recovers. So, in early mock, I get why he's nowhere near top 4. He may still not be a top 4 round pick come, August. But I can see if he's progressing well. We're seeing him run. He's playing preseason, that he gets really boosted up to almost to the point where I'm not touching either one of them because, I think there's going to be a lot of hype around this Houston offense this offseason, and it might be like, whoa, hold your horses. Like, yes, CJ Stroud, did amazing things. Nico Collins was good. Tank Dell was good. But I mean, come on, Gabe Davis vibes, right? Like,
yeah,
man, 2 years ago we were drafting Gabe Davis super high, and it's funny because that year he actually finished like right where his ADP was, but it didn't feel like it.
No, it didn't. Right.
Like, and we saw it again this year. I mean, it was almost worse this year. Like he went like 3 games in a row with goose eggs, and you're like, you can't have that on your roster.
No.
It's impossible. So finishing things off here, we got Josh Jacobs, Calvin Ridley, Rachaad White, Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker. So a lot of running backs here at the end. A lot of really good running backs too. We'll pass on Calvin Ridley. I'm pissed off at him. I drafted him a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, and you just
big things, but
you just got Christian Kirk there too, Zay Jones, and I know you'd like to think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a bounce back season, but yeah, man, I'm not.
It didn't happen, man. That offense was not as good as we were hoping, unfortunately. But look, Josh Jacobs was good when healthy. Rachaad White he just touched the ball a ton. He's not super efficient with it, but if he touches the ball again, that's going to be a good pick. Tony Pollard right there, Kenneth Walker. Tony Pollard and Kenneth Walker, like I wasn't as like excited about Kenneth Walker, but getting him at pick 48.
Yep.
I was all in on that one. Like I was kind of shocked that he was sitting there. I get the Charbonnet concerns and that he could get more involved, but like, did we really see enough from Charbonnet this year to really worry about Kenneth Walker? Like, I think I remember looking like, and I don't have the exact stat in front of me. The red zone touches for Kenneth Walker, at least like 2/3 of the way through the season, he led the league in red zone touches for running backs. And I don't see any reason why they would go away from that. I know they're gonna have a new coaching staff there, so maybe. But Kenneth Walker, outside of missing a few games due to injury, but who almost doesn't at this point,
especially at that position,
just consistent, especially as my RB2 at pick 48. Tony Pollard, man, I know you took him, dude. We're talking a guy who was going in the first round in a lot of drafts this year. RB. I mean, who was going
6,
in front of him?
7,
probably CMC, right? Dude.
Austin Eckler was going ahead of him. I'm just looking at our draft board right now. He actually went RB3 in the draft in our home league, but like Josh Jacobs could have went ahead of him. Saquon, Nick Chubb.
I mean, Barkley was probably going ahead of him. Chubb, that might Bijan. And then it was like Tony Pollard range. Like he was right there, like RB4, 5, 6. We're talking really far down the board now. It was a fairly disappointing season for Tony Pollard. Wasn't utilized in the passing game like we saw. We didn't see those explosive plays like we've seen in years past. It seems like the concern, and I'm there that he can't handle. He was a better change of pace guy than
Sure.
he was lead back role. And so maybe Dallas goes out and finds somebody, because I don't think they have that person on the roster right now. It's not
Right.
Rico Dowdell. It's not,
Yeah. He,
any of these guys, right? So, why did you take Tony Pollard over Walker here?
a little bit of a post type sleeper, kind of like what you were getting at. And I tossed Tony Pollard and Kenneth Walker. They were both, I thought about it for a minute. I'm like, which way do I really want to go? But kind of the way you framed it, just to think that he was going where he was going this year, to get him at 411, I just feel like is really good value, because Joe, he still saw over 250 carries.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't forget he broke his leg in the playoff game last year too, so he had to come back from that as well. If they don't add anybody, and I know he's a free agent, I would assume maybe they franchise tag him, maybe they work out a shorter term deal. Who knows at this point? But yeah, I like it here where I got him at 411. He was going to be my RB1, which I don't love because of some of the inconsistencies. But at this point in the draft, man, it just is what it
Yeah,
is. But I just wanted to say one thing: at the running back position as a whole, at this point in the draft, this used to kind of be considered the RB dead zone. But now, Joe, look who you're getting. You're getting Josh Jacobs. You're getting Rashad White. You're getting Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker. This is
because the
great
receivers are getting
value.
pushed up.
Yeah,
We're getting
this is
quarterbacks
great.
mixed in. Tight ends are
Yep.
jumping up now. So yeah, you're getting a lot of good. And it's I used to be like Dennis, right? Running back,
The
running
heavy
back, man.
heavy
Just
RB,
give
sure.
me all the running
Mhm.
backs, right? And yeah, he got Amari Cooper, fantastic, right? But with the way receivers are being drafted now, like especially all of us here in the beginning, you're kind of getting your hand forced, man. And if you don't grab one of these early receivers, like your first receiver, unless you get lucky, like Dennis didn't get Amari Cooper,
Yeah.
which he's not he's not a wide receiver one, right? He's a
Yeah,
wide receiver two for
he's
sure,
not an elite tier guy,
but
sure.
he's
Yep.
fine, right?
Mhm.
Unless you're looking at some pretty iffy receivers, as your wide receiver one. If you don't go grab somebody, like, I'll be honest with you, Chris Robbins' team with, he took Mahomes and Andrews, and then Waddle is his only receiver. That really concerns me. I know there's some guys still on the board who, will likely come back around, but yikes, that's not a.
Sure.
I mentioned that in some of our like pick by pick strategy articles that we did this past year on Fantasy Six Pack, to where if you took a quarterback early, you can't also take a tight end early. You really
Right.
hamstring your team. You've got to pick one. If you go tight end early, you wait on quarterback. If you go quarterback early, you wait on tight end. You've really got to load up on those positions that you need multiple of them, and just hope you find somebody later. A guy here who you mentioned but did not get picked, Mr. Austin Eckler. How the mighty have fallen. How many shares of Eckler I had this year? Oh boy, a lot. Where do you think he goes? You there? Oh, Dylan froze. So I will talk. So I'm gonna say that Eckler goes very, very soon. Fifth round probably. I think there will be somebody that takes a chance on him. It was an absolute atrocious year for Austin Eckler. He only scored 5 touchdowns, and that was the big thing with him. Is like you just kind of expected him to be able to get in the end zone. Like, he's still heavily targeted for this team. 74 receptions, or 74 targets, sorry. 51 receptions, and he missed a couple of games himself, but the yards per average rushing dropped a full yard from 4.5 to 3.5. The offense was just kind of blah the whole year, outside of Keenan Allen just blowing up early on. It just wasn't a good season for the Chargers in general. They're going to be bringing in a new coaching staff. Austin Eckler might be kind of hitting that, point where he's not going to be an elite running back, but I don't think he's totally cooked. I still think he's going to be valuable here. So, he's a guy that I was kind of surprised wasn't taken. Another guy, and this might go back to the fact that, the draft board on Sleeper, we use Sleeper for this, it's not any fault to them, right? Is that they don't have it resorted for the 2024 season, right? Like nobody's doing that yet. So a guy though that didn't get drafted, who I was kind of surprised, is Rashee Rice. And Dylan mentioned him already. If you go from week 12 to 17 here in half PPR leagues, Rashee Rice was wide receiver 6. You could argue that Rashee Rice needs to be drafted around the Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman, Jalen Waddle range. I think I'm drafting mostly everybody else that got drafted ahead of him already. The Puka Nacuas, the DJ Moores, the Brandon Ayuks. Although, I mean, as much as I know Dylan, Mr. Bears fan, sorry, not here to defend yourself, man, but as much as DJ, he's a big DJ Moore fan because of the Bears tie that he's got, I still am a little reluctant on DJ Moore. He's very big play dependent. And you just don't know what you're going to get with this Bears offense from week to week. Who's going to be the quarterback, even if they bring in Caleb Williams, or if they, move down and draft another quarterback, are they going to be any good? What's the new coaching staff going to look like? There's a lot of question marks there, to where I think we're seeing the rise of Rashee Rice already. He's got an elite quarterback. I really like Rashee Rice, and he will, very likely be in this round 3 range, in my opinion. Come draft, you're going to see people really reach for him, though. I guarantee it. So just something else to keep an eye on. And then, look, this of course didn't include rookies. I don't really know the rookies as well. We have a lot of guys on the staff that kind of dive into the rookies a lot more than I do. JJ being one of them. So keep an eye out for that. And we will be doing mocks later this year with rookies involved. But, right now I'm not seeing a whole lot. I don't feel like we've got like a Bijan coming out that's like, oh, he should be drafted in round 1. And I mean, look how that turned out anyway. So, I'm a little leery on the rookies as far as redrafts most of the time. I know they always, we see them perform time and time again, but we see a lot of them kind of bust out too. So that's what happens. So all right, guys. So that is it for me. Dylan is back. So Dylan, if you want to say a couple of last words here.
No, that just sucked, man. Losing internet. I lost it for like a minute or two. Like,
that happens,
what the heck
man.
happened?
It's all good. We got big snowstorms and cold. It's gonna happen. So I mentioned Rashee Rice and I mentioned Eckler. My quick question to you as you froze was, where do you think Eckler gets drafted?
I think that has a lot to depend on where he goes as well, because we expect him to miss teams, right? I think, to switch teams, he's an impending free agent.
Yeah. But, well, I don't know. I mean, the Chargers are going to have to figure out something to run back. They don't have anybody on that roster that I think can do it.
I think around 5th round would probably be fine for Austin Eckler, but I think at this point in his career, I think he's more of just the pass catching back and kind of a change of pace guy. And in full PPR formats, I think he'll be viable. And if he's going in the 5th and 6th round, I think that's okay value. And I wouldn't mind targeting Eckler there at all. But Rashee Rice is definitely trending in the right direction.
I said, we probably all miss on him just because they didn't have the draft room isn't resorted. You could argue he could go in the Debo, Olave, Adams, Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman range easily. I mean, he was wide receiver 6 in half PPR the last 6 weeks of the season. That's absolutely insane. So, all right, man. Well, that is it. Dylan, I want to thank you for jumping on here and talking with me. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you later.
Thanks, Joe.